Hi, I'm MICHAELJOSH, and you're watching GadgetMatch. Two of the holiday season's most coveted gifts are undoubtedly the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, next-gen gaming consoles which both shared similar launch dates last month. Both are very hard to come by, but Sony and Microsoft are promising more releases before the end of the year. So if you're still torn between these two consoles, don't know which one to get just yet, join me in a two-part video where we break down the pros and cons between the two. Next week, we'll talk about the Xbox Series X. But in this video, I'll tell you why you should buy the PlayStation 5. If you look at the consoles that have come before, you almost have to double check that the PlayStation 5 belongs in the same family. There's nothing squarish about it, and while we've seen PS consoles in white, nothing comes close to ostentatious as this. In a room where your TV and your soundbar are black, it's definitely going to stand out. Two separate matte white panels sandwich a glossy black inner column and curve upwards like the spire of a modern tower. And here's a bit of trivia for you. When you look closely, the interior of these white panels have an almost leather grain texture to it, but not visible to the naked eye. That texture is actually achieved by a pattern of small embossed shapes. You guessed it, triangles, circles, X's, and squares. Those iconic symbols on PlayStation controllers. Speaking of, that textured grippy part under the controller is also made up of those same embossed shapes. I must say, it's a pretty cool Easter egg. When you power on the PS5, blue lights glow from within. It's a futuristic looking piece of tech, and I appreciate the aesthetic. It just might not be easy to pair with your home decor. What I have a bigger issue with though, is its size. It's about 16 inches tall, or wide if you choose to lay it down on its belly. It's larger than I had expected, and definitely dwarfs the Xbox Series X. And I know what you're going to say, I need more room in my console closet. And it's true, the space I've allocated isn't going to provide enough room for air to circulate. So before you go out and buy it, think about where you might put it. You might need to buy a new TV stand. As next-gen consoles, both the PS5 and Xbox Series X are built to deliver what many consider to be the holy grail of gaming. Things like support for higher resolutions, faster refresh rates, and ray tracing. And while there are many different tests and reviews on the internet which will tell you which console is more powerful and when, in very basic terms, both consoles are equally as powerful. If you're looking for a reason to upgrade your PlayStation, the PS5's new CPU and GPU deliver on those promises. It supports up to 8K and 4K at 120 frames per second. There's a caveat though. Most games, at least for now, will downscale to 1080p when you switch to 120 FPS. It also supports ray tracing, which is a rendering technique that simulates the way light bounces off objects in the real world. It's definitely a graphics improvement that makes games feel more realistic than ever before. But again, a caveat. Notice in Spider-Man Miles Morales, if you want ray tracing turned on, you need to switch from 60 FPS performance mode down to 30 FPS fidelity mode. How does that look like? Pay attention to the reflections. In performance mode, you just see light reflected on the floor. In fidelity mode, with the ray tracing on, you see the windows from the building across the street reflect on the floor, as well as Spidey himself reflected as he approaches the window. My issue with this is that the whole point between faster refresh rates is smoother gameplay and quicker response times. And for a fast-paced game like Spider-Man Miles Morales, I'd pick faster refresh rates over fancy graphics any day. One last spec bump worthy of note is the new NVMe solid-state drive. This is the first time we've seen SSDs on a console, and I've gotta tell you, games boot up much, much faster. The same thing goes for switching between worlds, walking in and out of a door, that kind of thing. Speaking of storage, the PS5 comes with 825 gigabytes built in, but only 667 is usable. The rest is taken up by the system naturally. Considering how some games take up over 100 gigabytes sometimes, that's not a lot to work with. And while there's actually a slot for external storage inside the machine, support for it hasn't been enabled yet. It will eventually, though. One last caveat, I promise. To get all those new promised features apart from games that support it, you might also need a new TV. Do you have a 4K TV for that 4K game you want to play? There's also the matter of refresh rates. Many TVs don't support 120 Hz. And finally, check to see if your TV supports HDMI 2.1, which is new, different from 2.0, and is required for gaming at 4K 120 FPS. Which TVs have both? Here's a look at some 2020 models to choose from. LG CX OLED is a popular but pricey choice. My 86-inch LG NanoCell 90 is as well. Samsung's QLED 70, 80, and 90T models. Also, Sony just rolled out an update that enables support for their Z8H and X900H models. And on the more affordable end, Vizio's P, PX, and OLED range. Don't worry, we'll put links to all of these TVs in the description box below. For me, the #1 reason to get the PlayStation 5 over the Xbox Series X is this, the DualSense Controller. Notice it's not called DualShock anymore, and this guy is deserving of its own review. Apart from its obvious redesign, new color, new shape, DualSense is all about haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. It's something you need to experience firsthand to fully appreciate. Thankfully, the PS5 comes preloaded with the game Astro's Playroom, which is the best showcase of what the DualSense controller can do. The haptic engine inside the controller is so good that you can feel the difference when Astro is walking on sand or ice, or jumping on lilies, or slipping into the water. The adaptive triggers too should simulate what it feels like to pull on a bow or the recoil of a gun. In this demo, I could literally feel what you can see, with the intensity of the firepower changing depending on how much I pressed on the trigger. Of course, there's a catch too. You need developers to be willing to support these new adaptive triggers, and while a lot of launch titles have it sprinkled in already, we've seen slow adoption with the likes of the Nintendo Switch's HD Rumble, which, by the way, uses an earlier version of the technology that's found here. That said, if done right and done well, it's going to make a world of difference in your gameplay. The DualSense controller charges via its built-in USB-C port and takes about 3 hours from 0 to full. Mileage will vary depending on use, but it lasted me 2 days of average game time. While exclusive launch titles aren't as bountiful as they used to be, based on their track record, the PS5 will most likely have more exclusives than Xbox. Most of them are promised for 2021, including Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and Final Fantasy XVI, among many others. But what can you play today? As of December 1st, there are 7 PlayStation console exclusives listed. The most popular launch title is Spider-Man's Miles Morales, which is also available for the PS4. Definitely the best showcase of ray tracing right now. More my jam, and the game I've been spending plenty of time on, is Sackboy, a platformer set to an incredible soundtrack of pop tunes. But the most highly rated so far has to be Demon's Souls, only available for the PS5, and is a remake of the 2003 original that debuted on the PS3. Other popular titles are also available for the Xbox Series X, including a version of Fortnite that's optimized for the PS5's adaptive triggers. I've spent a few hours on the action role-playing game Assassin's Creed Valhalla, an epic storytelling journey of a fictional Viking invasion of Britain. I know many of my good friends are also into Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. By the way, there's also backwards compatibility, meaning the PS5 will support most, if not all, PS4 titles. And if you're a PS Plus subscriber, you also get access to what Sony calls generation-defining PS4 games, free with your membership. These games, including Uncharted 4, which is the only PS game review I've ever done on this channel. Don't check it out, but We'll still put a link up there. Speaking of games, you can also get the digital edition of the PS5 for $100 less. But I suggest spending that $100 more on the standard edition with the disc drive. That way you can buy physical copies and then resell them or share them with your friends. So, is the PlayStation 5 your gadget match? It's been 6 years since the launch of the PlayStation 4 and about 3 since the launch of the PS4 Pro, and in that time, the gaming world has changed. So has the technology that's available. We give the PS5 the GadgetMatch seal of approval. Between its better graphics and faster loading times, it's enough for me to recommend to any PlayStation fan, even if they already own a PS4 Pro. Even if most games don't yet take advantage of its next-gen abilities. Should you wait? That's a tough one. I know we've all had a rough year, and with the holidays coming up, it would be nice to have a shiny new console to play new games on. But if you're not in a hurry, then sure, wait for 2021 where availability might not be that big of a problem. Just promise me you don't do the desperate thing and pay double for the console. Next year, we'll definitely see a host of next-gen titles for this next-gen console. Also remember what I said about TV compatibility. What use is a new console with all those great graphics features if your TV doesn't support it? If you're shopping for your first console and are still torn between the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, for me, the choice should definitely be about the games that you will want to play. So, my suggestion? Peruse the current selection, as well as the confirmed 2021 releases, and then decide. Some might not agree, but I say get the PS5 for its better selection of exclusive titles. Also get it for DualSense. This is not your ordinary controller. It's not just a vibration or a rumble. Everything literally feels more immersive and realistic. One last thing I want to point out is from GadgetMatch.com's managing editor Rod Neal, who says in his review that with the announcement of PlayStation Studios, it isn't far-fetched to think that the next generation of exclusives will all take full advantage of DualSense. It also means that there are more exciting titles to come that will add to PlayStation's already incredible roster. And that was our PlayStation 5 review. Don't forget, we have part 2 where we tell you why you should buy the Xbox Series X instead. To make sure you don't miss that video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so that you get notified as soon as we upload. Follow me on social media for all the behind-the-scenes fun stuff. And as always, make GadgetMatch.com your daily habit. Until the next video, I'm MICHAELJOSH. Thanks for dropping by.